Apple is one of the most powerful companies on Earth today.
In today's Tech Bites, Apple may be looking to add a more expensive option to its upcoming iPhone.
In today's Tech Bites, the new iPhones. Apple has unveiled 4 models: the 14, the 14 Plus, the 14 Pro, and the 14 Pro Max.
But for long periods of its life, this company was a failure. Apple shipped broken products, burned through cash, and lost control of its own future. At its lowest point, Apple was weeks away from bankruptcy. Investors had given up. Analysts believed the company was finished. And many inside Apple thought the end was inevitable. So how did a company this close to collapse survive? How did it rebuild itself, take back control of technology, and grow into one of the most dominant empires in history? Welcome to the insane true story of Apple. To understand why Apple mattered, you first have to understand the world before it existed. In the late 1960s, technology was not personal. Computers were massive machines owned by governments, universities, and large corporations. They were expensive, difficult to use, and completely inaccessible to normal people. Then the microchip arrived. It quietly changed everything by making computers smaller, cheaper, and more powerful. Most people didn't notice yet. One person was already obsessed with this idea. Steve Wozniak was an engineer who loved computers for one simple reason. He wanted to understand how they worked. He spent his time reading manuals, studying circuitry, and building machines just for fun. At the time, owning a computer was unrealistic for normal people. They were too large, too expensive, and too complex. But Wozniak believed computers should be personal. Not tools for institutions, but devices individuals could own and use themselves. That belief led him to computer clubs, where hobbyists shared ideas and homemade machines. The most important of these was the Homebrew Computer Club, a small group that would soon change the entire industry. At the Homebrew Computer Club, two very different mindsets collided. Steve Wozniak saw computers as puzzles to solve. Steve Jobs saw something else. He saw potential. Where Wozniak was focused on engineering, Jobs was focused on what the technology could become. He understood that most people didn't want to build computers. They wanted to use them. Jobs quickly realized that Wozniak's designs could be turned into products, not just for hobbyists, but for everyday consumers. Their first computer, the Apple I, was simple and incomplete. It had no screen, no keyboard, and no case. It was basically a circuit board sold to people who already knew what they were doing. But it worked. And more importantly, people were willing to pay for it. That was proof the idea had real value. The real breakthrough came with the Apple II. This time, it wasn't just a machine. It was a product. It came fully assembled, with a keyboard, a screen, and a simple design that didn't scare users away. It could display color graphics and was easy to use compared to anything else on the market. Jobs pushed hard on presentation and accessibility. The computer wasn't just functional. It looked friendly. The result was mass adoption. Millions of units sold. Apple had its first major success and suddenly became a serious company. Success brought money, attention, and pressure. Apple went public in 1980, creating instant millionaires and turning the company into a global name almost overnight. But rapid growth also meant higher expectations and less room for mistakes. And Apple started making mistakes. The Apple III was unreliable and rushed to market. Then came the Lisa, one of the first computers with a graphical interface. It was innovative, but far too expensive, and had very little software people actually wanted. Inside the company, tensions grew. Eventually, Steve Jobs was pushed out of the company he helped build. Without Jobs, Apple lost its direction. The company kept releasing computers, but the products felt confused and overpriced. There was no clear identity, no strong vision, and no excitement around the brand. Meanwhile, Jobs moved on. He built NXT, experimenting with advanced software and hardware. He also took control of Pixar, which would go on to change animation forever. Microsoft's software ran on cheaper machines made by other companies. Those computers were everywhere. By the mid-1990s, Apple was burning cash and running out of options. The company was only weeks away from bankruptcy. Apple had run out of time. In 1996, the company made a last-ditch decision. It bought NXT, not just for its technology, but to bring Steve Jobs back. Jobs returned and immediately took control. He cut nearly 70% of Apple's projects. Entire teams were shut down. Apple stopped trying to be everything. It rebuilt around a small number of products that actually mattered. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. It was simple, colorful, and easy to use. More importantly, it felt like Apple again. For the first time in years, people were excited about the company. Apple stopped thinking like a computer company. Instead of focusing only on Macs, it began building connected products that worked better together than apart. The iPod changed how people listened to music. It was simple, portable, and easy to use. Millions of people carried their entire music library in their pocket for the first time.
These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
The iPhone changed everything. Before it, smartphones were awkward. Tiny keyboards, confusing menus, and limited software. They were built for work, not for people. Apple did something different. The iPhone combined a phone, an iPod, and the internet into one device. It was controlled entirely by touch. Then Apple opened the App Store. Developers could build on top of the iPhone, expanding what the device could do without Apple doing everything itself. That single decision created unlimited growth. Apple became a mobile-first company, and the iPhone became the center of its entire empire. Steve Jobs died in 2011, and many believed Apple's best days were over. But under Tim Cook, Apple shifted from pure innovation to scale and execution. The company expanded into wearables, services, and subscriptions. Apple's history shows one thing clearly: it never stays still for long. And the question isn't whether Apple will change again. It's what it will change into next.